Go run. Just run. And he did. He left the back door, and that was the last time I saw my father. After that, in the hysteria of that, my mother was on the phone and called 911 and screaming for help. And so eventually, ambulances came and police came, and I got my head stapled at the hospital. I came back, and the police were there, write a report. And I came back into my room, and I noticed that things had shifted. I have a closet that has access to the attic, and I noticed that furniture was moved in such a way to gain access to the attic. And I told police that I think my father's still in the house and he's in the attic. So they did what they're trained to do. They sectioned off the area and confronted my father, and one thing led to another. I wasn't there, but shots were fired, and my father was killed. And I remember that day so vividly. It was, I don't mean to sound callous, but in a lot of ways it liberated me. It certainly liberated my mother. It was one of the hardest and most sad days for her. But it liberated her, and it liberated myself and my brother. And it taught me, it became the benchmark for me to do so many more things in my life. Because I don't think I was meant to be a SEAL. I don't think I was born to do any of the things that I've had the opportunity to do, but it's because of those experiences. Being able to stand up to a person, to a figure who I feared more than anyone, and to be able to do something that I never thought I could be possible doing, standing up to someone, especially someone who was threatening to kill you and the person you loved most. It was empowering. It liberated me. It taught me I'm not the scared little boy I thought I was. I can do these things, that I can be a part of something bigger than myself. And, I remember having so much foolish, naive pride at the time. I was naturally being 18 and just so angry with the world, just having so much hate to my heart. I think I had a lot of hate in my heart as a kid. When I see my child, Christian, who is full of happiness and carefree and is like me in so many ways, I see him and I realize that is the person I would have become. And I want to protect that. But with the life, the cards I'd been given, I just had a lot of hate in my heart, and I refused to cry because I thought that was a form of weakness, to cry for my father who had passed. And I never, didn't cry at his funeral or anything. And I remember that day, on that day when my father died, we went to the police department. And I'd already known what had happened. And I remember going in, and there were 3 cops to the side, and I knew then, and I also know just now of how warriors talk. And the guy talking was motioning with his hands, and he was recounting the story that led to my father's death. And, using his motions of how he entered, and he saw us come in, and my brother was weeping and very naturally inconsolable, and I was there, and I think we made brief eye contact, and I thank him for that, because I think he had the clarity and the respect to kind of stop what he was doing and realize that he was probably recounting a war story of someone he had killed, and this family was just walking through. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but just telling the story made me remember that. And the detective I talked to, he said, "Son, I'm sorry to tell you, but your father is dead." And this is one-on-one in a room. And I was just emotionless, just stone-faced. And he said, I take it that this is not bad news. Is this good? And I said, I'm just relieved, sir. And he said, I understand, son. And it's just a day for so many reasons that that helped me be reborn into the person I wanted to become, that I've always wanted to become my entire life. And I knew from there that maybe, just maybe, I had what it took to be a SEAL.
Is there anything that you can think of? Because like that's obviously just a harrowing story, but at some point you, or maybe it was some point along the way, or maybe it was multiple points along the way, but it's like you turned, instead of turning towards the darkness, right? Instead of becoming a person that's abusive, instead of, hating, like you said, you had hatred in your heart, which could have turned you in just a completely, a totally different direction in your life. Is there anything that you can think of that made you look up and say, and this is for me right now, this is my first time hearing this stuff. And, when you applied to become an officer in the, become a PA, I think that's what you were originally applying for. Were you trying to become a PA?
For me, it was always being a physician.
Okay. So you were applying for the medical thing. And I remember I'm sitting on your medical board or your officer board, and it's me as a SEAL and one regular officer and then like a doctor officer. And I remember, I said something along the lines of, because you know me, I kind of say whatever I want, but I said something along the lines of like, hey, I don't like hospitals, I don't like doctors, I don't like nurses, I don't like any of that stuff. I have no idea why you would ever want to do this. I don't know why you want to go be in a hospital all day. And I said, but if I had to have someone taking care of my kids, I would want it to be you, because I knew you had this that you were a very compassionate person, that you really cared about other people. I mean, I saw that from day one with you. And now now it's so obvious. Well, part of it's obvious. Part of it's obvious that you can go with these experiences that you went through. I mean, we see it every day that people go in two directions with those, when horrible things like that happen. They can follow in those footsteps of evil, for lack of a better word, or they can recognize that it's evil and they can go in the other direction, which is what you did. And I'm just wondering, are there any pieces that you can put together that you can say to yourself, well, one of the things that you saw was this, and this made you think, you know what? The way my father acted was wrong, and I'm not going to be that way.
It's a good question. I don't think I have an answer for you. I think that's a question that a lot of people would love answered, especially with so much abuse and dysfunction in society, in America, all over the world. We would love to know what it is that allows people to sublimate their bad experiences to channel it for a good cause. And I'm not here to tell you I was never on the path to darkness. I am by no means a saint or have always done good things. I've done things that I'm not proud of. I've sinned. I sin every day. I try and keep that light there as a guiding path for good all the time. And one of the reasons why I wanted to be a doctor was not because I was in love with medicine. I mean, I do like medicine, but it's to serve to a cause greater than myself. that leaves a positive mark in this world. It's the same reason why I wanted to be an astronaut. I think being a SEAL was maybe a little bit more selfish for the reasons we talked about, because I wanted to be a part of. I wanted to find my identity. But I don't know. I think my mother had a large part into it. She's one of the strongest women I know, and seeing that strength and that selflessness and that sacrifice. She sacrificed her dreams. She could have been someone. She's a smart woman. She's a beautiful woman. She didn't have to be with my father. But after having 2 boys and loving her children so much that she would sacrifice her dreams, her potential to protect us, I think that had a significant effect on me. So if there's anyone to credit, it would be my mother. I don't know if I have the answer though.
Well, certainly seeing an example, and I've been talking about this lately. Sometimes it's not easy to see something if there's not a contrast against it, but for you to see the contrast of someone that's bad, your dad doing bad things, abusing weaker people. I mean, this is just, that's just bad. And you might not have noticed how bad that was if it weren't contrasted so drastically against your mom, who is making the ultimate sacrifice with her life and standing up for you and taking that abuse and staying in that situation because she wanted to take care of you kids. And I think when you see that, sometimes it makes things just more obvious. It's something that you may not have seen otherwise. If your mom was just as abusive, or she had her own problems, or she was doing things that were wrong, you may have just thought that's the way the world is and that's the way you're going.
Yeah.
But to be able to see, it doesn't have to be like this, and there's good in people's hearts, is that could be for a kid the difference.
Yeah. I mean, all good points, and it's so weird to be recounting this story to you. I've never said this story publicly. And you said yourself you've never heard this story. Well, if you ask most guys from Charlie Platoon, they have not heard this. Actually, I think if you ask all but maybe one person, they have not heard this story. And it's just something I kept close to my chest, because everyone has their story. I don't think my story is any more important than anyone else's. And we talked a little bit before this podcast, but I'm a little at unease, and still am, about being on a podcast like this, because it's so, I don't want to say it's contrary to my beliefs, but it just requires being extra thoughtful. And I think that creed we all swore to not advertise and promote the nature of our work and never seek recognition for that. And I take that creed to heart. So it's weird for me to be recounting this story publicly, and if it was up to me, I'd keep it close to the chest for all my days. But as I've grown older, I've come to realize that there is value for other people. I'm not the only person in this situation, and frankly, there are people in way worse situations than I was in, who are still in it. For them to know that you can be born with bad cards. You don't need to have it all, but you have a choice and the power to craft your own destiny, your own path. And for that reason, I think it is less important that I keep stuff like this close to my chest, and that's why I'm sharing it with you.
Well, that's That's one of the very reasons why this podcast even exists, is for people to learn